But this is just the start of the wildfire season. It's forecasted to be a long and brutal one. Joining us now is Canada's national response. On Canada's national response is the Emergency Preparedness Minister Harjit Sajjan. Minister Sajjan, thank you so much for joining us here on Power Play.
Great, thank you for having me.
In February, after meeting with your provincial counterparts, you said that this year's wildfires could be even worse than last year. Now, how concerned are you by what we're seeing right now in the western part of the country?
Well, it is concerning to see what is taking place, but it's something that we did predict, and we've been preparing since last year's devastating wildfire season to get ready. Obviously, it is very concerning right now what is taking place, but good coordination is already taking place, not only within the provinces, but also amongst provinces as well.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about that coordination. Canada is one of the very few countries in the G7 without a national emergency coordinating agency of some kind. Last year, you had said that it's clear that something is needed, yet last week when you announced measures for the upcoming wildfire season, that agency wasn't part of it. Why not?
So first of all, we do have a very good system in place. Every nation has to develop one emergency preparedness system that works for them. Given the vastness of our country and the resources, and also the uniqueness when you look at across the country, our emergency preparedness system is based on the provinces and territories. So we do have a very good system, and more importantly, we have a good coordination system between the provinces. But as you know, because of climate change, we've had way more natural disasters from floods and wildfires taking place, and why we're stepping up. And the reason what we're doing right now is, first and foremost, we had to prioritize is making sure that we push the resources down to the lowest level so that we're ready for this year's season. And we've done that, increasing the number of firefighters that are trained, supervisors as well, Indigenous firefighters, and putting the resources there. And through our humanitarian workforce program, we're also increasing the capacity for the provinces so we can actually do some of the important work when it comes to evacuation, providing the humanitarian support, and pushing as many firefighters onto the front lines so that they're not left with setting up or running camps. And when it comes to a kind of modernized national system, we're going to be building from the bottom up. And so a lot of work has been done this year. We have some more work taking place this summer, talking to some of our G7 counterparts around the world and what is the best needs. And one of the things that what I want to do is, when you create a national agency, the last thing you want to do is actually pull resources away from the local level that would normally respond. So as we look at what a national system will look like, we want to make sure that we push the resources down, and that was the main effort for this year.
But why isn't something ready yet? I know you're saying that you're looking at different systems, you're talking to different G7 nations, but a lot of people sort of look at this and, we look south of the border. We know, I've already heard you say in the past that FEMA in the United States is not something that you want to imitate, but maybe something more along the lines of what Germany and Australia has. Why not have something ready for this wildfire season instead of this pilot project that you did announce last week involving multiple non-governmental organizations like the Red Cross? Why not have something that's more federally led?
So first of all, it's a really good question that you ask. First and foremost, a lot of these organizations have already been doing great work across the country, and what we're doing now is actually coordinating that work, organizing it so that have even a greater impact. And what we're doing federally is helping to coordinate that function. Over the years, we actually increased their capacity to respond more. And this year what we're doing is looking at, we're actually bringing them together, different organizations, and to be able to deploy them very similar that we would do on a federal request for assistance level. And I just don't want to keep one year, if we were to create throughout from last year to this year a national organization, keep in mind the training that would take place would be quite intensive. We'd actually be drawing from the provincial and municipal resources that would actually be needed to prepare and actually fight for the wildfire season. So that's one of the things that we're going to we're balancing out right now. So that we don't take away from the lowest levels. Like I said, I want to make sure that we push resources to the lowest level, the municipal and provincial level first, and then keep working towards a federal system. And keep in mind, we can't just also stop at wildfires and floods. at a federal level, we have to look at all types of responses. Heaven forbid, I mean, I'm in Vancouver, earthquake is always a significant concern. Hazardous material from oil spills, other things, and as you know, from a health pandemic as well. So any new system that we kind of develop needs to make sure that it can work for all type of emergencies.
Yeah, and I take your point of not wanting to draw on provincial resources, but then when would be a good time? Because one would think that going forward, these wildfires, you've said it, experts on climate have said that they're going to be more and more happening more and more often and more severe. So it almost feels like there wouldn't be any good time to start this.
No, in fact, actually, this has been going on concurrently. The difficult thing is when you're dealing with emergencies, you know, you have to deal with it and at the same time evolve and get bigger to deal with the, you know, the increased frequency and severity of things. So I'll give you some of the work that we're doing right now, just kind of a prelude to it. We are talking with different organizations. Team Rubicon we just brought into the Humanitarian Workforce Program, in addition to SARVAC, who are made up of search and rescue volunteers with high level capability across the country. And we've been in discussions looking at them on how they can increase their capacity to provide their unique skill set to be able to respond to floods and for wildfires. But the thing is, as you know, anytime you want to actually train more people, you actually have to take away capacities. So I'll give you a quick example right now. Manitoba is right in the middle of training their Type 1 wildfire firefighters. And they had to draw upon Ontario and Saskatchewan to deal with some of their threat. So this is that balance that we do need to get right. I'd love to be able to say that, hey, listen, at the federal level, we have an agency ready to go, all trained out, but sadly, it might have been at the expense of taking away from the provinces. So this is something that we're monitoring very closely. What's our capacity across the country? CIFC is also coordinating between the provinces, looking at what's also available internationally as we increase the level of support. So we spoke with the experts. One of the key things was not only increase the number of firefighters, which we have, and it's over 600, and we're going to continue to increase that. But the other key component is actually making sure that we have the right leadership. What you need when it comes to wildfires, and what I've observed over the last number of years, is you better put say approximately a 10-person team together with the right resources, send them to the right area with the right leadership, so they can plug and play very quickly to a response. And I'll give the example of a Soyuz again. When the local fire department was fighting the fire to keep it from hitting the town, they were focused on the actual neighborhoods. And then as the resources were pushed, there's no communication that even was needed because they had that level of experience. So if you just increase the number of firefighters without increasing the level of experienced folks, you're not going to be able to lead the right folks into those type of situations. So sadly, I mean, it is very complex, but I have a lot of confidence in what we've been doing so far, because we've been talking to the experts, working with the provinces and territories, and more importantly, the Indigenous communities across the countries have really stepped up. Increasing their capacity has allowed us to look at identifying, preventing, and more importantly, being able to respond better as well. And we'll continue to learn as we move forward and build up a rapid national level system that complements what we have at the provincial and territorial level.
Yeah, Minister, part of that system will most undoubtedly include equipment. On Monday, we spoke to the president of the Canadian Association of Fire Chiefs, Ken McMullen. He told us one of the biggest issues that they're having is resourcing that equipment. He says that the equipment being used by the men and women on the front lines right now isn't ideal for the job that's in front of them. So what is the federal government doing to address that?
I'm glad you asked that question. In fact, actually last year, we started signing agreements through Minister Wilkins' portfolio in NRCan, signing agreements with the provinces and territories to increase their capacity for purchasing new equipment. And that's been done, I believe, across the country. And I think Quebec is right now in negotiations looking at as the last province now who needs it. But this is something that we started as of last year for this. So it's up to them to decide what type of actual equipment is needed. As you know, the fighting the wildfires in different portions of the country is very unique. I mean, I was just in the Yukon to see the type of training that they were doing. I was actually extremely impressed with what they were doing, but they were taking the lessons learned from last year and what took place in Yellowknife. And so having the right equipment, having the right air assets, one key thing that I also learned from previous years, we needed to increase our capacity for firefighting at night through aircraft. And that has been significantly increasing. And I believe that Alberta just utilized some of that capability just yesterday. And we're going to be looking at how can we increase this ability, but also look at new technology. I know there's a company in British Columbia that's looking at drone swarm technology. It's just at the infancy stages. But just to reassure Canadians, we're looking at all level tools, new type of research, up to including satellites. Like in the Yukon, what they've been able to do is they take the satellite imagery on a daily basis, look at where the fires have started, and prioritize which ones they need to put out very quickly so that it doesn't turn into a bigger issue. So a lot of work is taking place. I can talk forever about this.
Yeah,
but first
Minister,
and foremost, we want to make sure.
And I don't want to.
I just want to say we want to push the resource at the lowest level first. That's a priority.
Yeah, and I don't want to interrupt, but I just want to push back on that, because if Chief McMullen was saying on Monday that they don't have the actual resources, they don't have the equipment, then how do you square that with what you're saying is that they do have the money and the ability to purchase that? So where's the missing link here?
Well, I mean, I'm across the province and within the province and territories. What we don't want to do is micromanage the provincial emergency response capability on what they actually need. To say, listen, here you're going to get this type of equipment. The best way to do this is to making sure that we, as a federal government, give resources, funding available to the province and territories. So that is being looked at, and I will work with my team to look and see where those gaps are and see where we can help coordinate better.
Minister, just before leaving, I wanted to ask you, in your update that you gave last week on being prepared for the wildfires, you said that you don't see such a big role for the military to play. Why is that? We know that in the past we've seen General Wayne Eyre say, the Chief of the Defense Staff say that he doesn't want military to be deployed as much at home. But what do you say to some of those communities that might need those boots on the ground when it comes to the wildfires and really trying to help make sure that they can help the people on the front lines, those firefighters, actually fight the fires?
No, absolutely. And I spoke with Minister Blair directly about this, and I also been briefed by the Chief of Defense Staff. And as a former defense minister for 6 years, I can assure you when we put our defense policy together, first and foremost, the Canadian Armed Forces will be there to respond to Canadian needs. And what we're trying to emphasize is the Canadian Armed Forces sometimes is not the first and best tool to deploy. And that's what we've been doing, is building up other resources so that the right resources can respond. And what we've done is, in previous years, because there was a significant need, the Canadian Forces has responded. But Type 3 wildfire response sometimes is not the best suited for what soldiers can provide. What we want to do is increase that capacity locally. But one thing I can tell you, if there is a need for greater assistance from the Canadian Armed Forces, of course they will be utilized.
Okay, Minister of Emergency Preparedness Harjit Sajjan, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate this.